Then in 2005, in February of 2005, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife agents in Alabama confiscated a bear being illegally raised by a human. Before being transferred here to the center, the bear spent several weeks at a Humane Society shelter in Alabama, and while she was there, she became even more accustomed to humans and her canine friends that were there at the animal shelter. So shortly after she arrived here, it became very apparent to Lisa that Bear 64, Mimi, lacked normal bear skills necessary to survive in the wild. But Lisa hoped that being introduced to the other bears here at the center might help her learn these skills. So she was confused when she first came to the bear center and was fearful of everything except dogs. And so, of course, she didn't know how to be a bear. And prior to her experience at the shelter, she had a very poor diet, and Lisa had to coax her to eat a natural diet. And it was said that she was very playful and during her time at the Bear Center, and was often observed, it looked as though she was dancing with logs and saplings, PVC pipes that she would pull out of the ground, and you have a picture of one here, one of the pipes that deliver water that she managed to dismantle and pull out of the ground, but any other objects she came in contact with. She did pick up a few bear skills from watching Chester, who was in the enclosure next to her, and could be seen huffing and blowing and bluff charging saplings or logs and trees. And in turn, Chester was observed playing with logs after watching Mimi do that. So it just kind of shows you how the bears learn from one another. And although Mimi adjusted to life here and was a very happy, playful bear and did pick up some bear skills, she ultimately was deemed unreleasable because she never really developed those pertinent survival skills that would help her have a good quality of life and abundant life in the wild. So it was obvious she was destined to live out her life in captivity. She remained here at the center until spring of 2006, when the North Carolina Museum of Life and Science in Durham, North Carolina, agreed to provide her a home. And Mimi still lives there today. And when I talked to the lady at the North Carolina Museum of Life and Science last year, when I wrote this Facebook update, at that time she lived there with 3 other black bears, including Yona, who also is a former ABR resident. And it was Sherry Samuels at North Carolina Museum of Life and Science shared an update with me on Mimi. Says she was now 15 years old, so now she would be 16, doing very well in the bear habitat, is the oldest of the 4 bears that they have there. She mostly stays at the lower level, no more cliff climbing in the enclosure, and is usually found in the cave area. And says at night she's usually eager to go into their house, and in the winter it's hard to get her to leave their house. She is often featured on their blog, so you can go to the website for North Carolina Museum of Life and Sciences, www.lifeandscience.org, and they have a keeper blog and get some updates on Mimi. But the picture on the bottom was from a year ago, and to my knowledge, she's still there and would be 16 years old today. Then Bear 65 came in mid-May. TWRA officer Anthony Chitwood brought an injured male yearling from Cocke County. There were several residents that had reported a bear in distress that they thought had possibly been hit by a car. But upon initial examination, Charlie Rio, as he was named, was found to be suffering from malnutrition, dehydration, and had an old injury to his left hind leg, which was already healing. So he was confined for a brief period of time in an acclimation pen. And the 30-pound yearling, it was said, was very entertained watching Mimi's playful antics in the wild enclosure. They could observe one another, and it appeared that she would be showing off her dancing skills, as Lisa called them, for Charlie Rio. After being confined for about a month, he was released into the wild enclosure, made excellent progress, and then in just 3 months, the now 132-pound Charlie Rio was ready for release. So Officer Brandenburg returned him to his home range in Cott County and reported that he bolted out of the truck, ran into the woods, and never looked back. And then the last bear of 2005 was bear number 66, Nikolas. Townsend residents had reported seeing a tiny cub in the Tuckaleechee area, and the cub, his mother, and a sibling had been observed together just weeks earlier, and residents had reported the mother had been frightened away and one cub was left behind. So after watching for a period of time and realizing the mother wasn't coming back for him, TWA officers Joe Everett and Jeff Pierce brought the 20-pound cub, who was now 11 months old, to the Bear Center. And of course, it being Christmas, he was appropriately nicknamed Nikolas. He was placed in an acclimation pen where, of course, he was welcomed by Mimi, the resident welcome wagon bear, who was in the large enclosure nearby, huffing, chomping, and bawling. After a few days, he was released into his own enclosure and quickly found a favorite tree. By the end of January 2006, he had doubled his weight, and but he remained at the Bear Center until September 2006, when TWA officer David Whitehead, you know as Curator David, released the 146-pound yearling in the Tellico Bear Refuge.